Boom. What's going on, faithful? It's your boy Mike from the Nothing But Niners crew. Nick and I are here to bring you guys the beginning of our media week. This week, we're going to be bringing a lot of people from the 49ers media, maybe some former players and things like that. We're going to start this off with Fooch from NinersNation. But before we get to the special guest today, I want to let you guys know where to follow us. If this is your first time watching us on YouTube, welcome. We want you guys to click the subscribe button for us. We are doing a special giveaway. Once we reach 3,000 subscribers on YouTube, we are going to be giving away a autographed Adrian Colbert jersey. We put that up on our last video. Nick brought that with him so we could show you guys. It's going to come with a letter of authenticity and everything. Adrian Colbert has verified for us that it is authentic. It is one that he signed. So we're going to be giving that away. So even if you are already a subscriber, find someone else, help us get that to 3,000 mark, and we're going to randomly select one. There's a little app or machine that does it, and it's not going to be one of us. We're not going to give it to ourselves. So if someone that we know, they're not going to be able to get it. But for our loyal followers and subscribers, you guys can get that jersey. All right. Also, check out the website, www.nothingbutniners.com. There you're going to be led to a bunch of articles. We have a slew of great writers who are working hard every day to bring you guys good quality content. You're going to be led to our social medias. Twitter and Snapchat, both of those handles are Nothing But 9ERS. So make sure you check us out there. Give us follows over there. I don't know how to use Snapchat, but other people do here, so that's what they do. You guys can also check us out on Facebook, Nothing But Niners, spelled all the way out, no numbers in there. Click the like button. Tell some other people to check us out over there as well. We would greatly appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, we have our podcast. Oh, wait. And the Instagram account. I always forget about Instagram, Nick. Check us out on Instagram. That is also Nothing But Niners. Mike is doing a good job over there handling that. And then our podcast. Guys, we are on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Google Play. Anything that plays podcasts, you will find us there. You can search for NB Niners now, or 49ers, and we'll pop up in the top 10 for the most part. All right. So with no further ado, I'm going to toss it to my man, Nick. How you doing today, buddy?
What's going on, Mike? What's going on, Dave? Fooch. I guess I should just call you Fooch. But what's going on, man? Lovely holiday weekend here, getting that relaxation. Be glad to talk a little bit 49ers, and welcome to the show.
No, my pleasure. It's kind of, we're entering that downtime. I mean, I know there's OTAs and mini camp, but we're kind of, entering that summer downtime to really kind of relax and get, refreshed in time for training camp and then the long slog through the season.
Yeah, man, it could be a drag for a lot of people, especially for the fans who are like just itching for new information. They want us to keep the quality content coming, but it's hard to go out and write about things when there's not much going on. The team practice today, that's it. You're going to hear pros, you're going to hear cons, but then how do we make it interesting? And so that's what our media week is going to be about. We're going to be trying to bring faces to people, and with you doing NinersNation. I couldn't think of a bigger get for us. I mean, I'm really appreciative of you joining us. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I started the website way back when just to talk about the 49ers. I was bored at work, and it's like I need something to do. And so any chance to talk about the team, I mean, I'm always down for that. Absolutely.
So let's start with that. Let's talk about the team direction in general. We've come a long way from the last couple of seasons, and there's a lot of anticipation right now. So what do you think like this team is building for right now? Are our expectations right? We know what Vegas is saying about, 6th favorite to win the Super Bowl and things like that. Are we jumping the gun? What are your thoughts on that, David?
I think it's interesting. I'm originally from Las Vegas. Gambling has always been kind of, an area that I particularly enjoy talking about with sports. And yeah, the Vegas numbers, it's always, I think one thing that people don't always grasp is the idea that what they're saying is that they're trying to counter what the buzz is. So, Vegas doesn't necessarily think the 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl. Vegas doesn't think that they're going to win 8.5 games. They think this is what we can do to get the right amount of money, and so we make money. And so in particular, when it comes to Super Bowl odds, it shows you just how crazy they are. When when they're, I think, 3rd or 4th in the NFC, 6th or 7th overall, people want to bet on the 49ers right now. And I am normally a homer, but I would say that also means this could be a good time to fade the 49ers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely with the addition of Jimmy Garoppolo and the buzz going around with Jimmy Garoppolo and just where the team is headed. One of the biggest things that I've taken out of this whole thing is the team camaraderie, how these players have joined together. And it's kind of like talking about Vegas odds, because you wouldn't have thought that we'd be in this particular position that we are in now when we started off 0-9 last year. with the ending of the season, the addition of Jimmy Garoppolo, additions of different types of players, the team is definitely headed in the right direction. Would I say that it's Super Bowl bound right now? Probably not. I probably agree with the Vegas odds, but definitely something to be interested in and take a look at and reflect upon, because I mean, when you look at these teams that have won things, you can look at the Eagles last year. They weren't as good of a team the year before, but then made a couple additions, made a couple, subtractions from the team as well, and bam, they're Super Bowl champions. So we can't sit here and say that it won't happen. I mean, obviously, all of us as fans, expectations are high because of the Jimmy Garoppolo fever that's going around, I guess you could say. But it's interesting with the Vegas odds. I mean, I don't know how to take those, so we'll see, I guess.
I got a question for Fuchs, because I'm not much of a gambling guy. So were you trying to tell us that when the odds are high, it's less likely to happen? Or because, I mean, you see teams like Cleveland who are still at the bottom. So how exactly does – because they had us like the 6th best odds to win the Super Bowl.
So the way it works is when they say the 49ers have, the only teams ahead of them, I think, are like the Eagles, Vikings, Rams, and I think maybe Saints. It's not that they're saying that they don't think necessarily that the 49ers are the 4th most likely NFC team to win the Super Bowl. What they're saying is basically people are betting money. And, when the 49ers started to win some games, and that created this buzz and heading into the offseason, when they set Super Bowl odds in, late January, early February, they set a certain, odds at a certain number, and the 49ers were further down. Then the 49ers, we didn't know if they were going to re-sign Jimmy Garoppolo. We didn't know, we knew he would be around. We just didn't know how exactly. They extend him. They sign him to a long-term deal. Odds change. Odds come down a little bit. Their schedule comes out in April, or their schedule came out in April, and a lot of people use the previous year's strength of schedule to tell you how good, how strong or easy a schedule is. When in reality, that's there's a logical fallacy to that, because teams are going to change.
Right.
So I think just to kind of wrap this up in a ball. Basically, their schedule is relative. Like the back half of their schedule, I won't say it's easy, but it's not as difficult as it could be based. If you look at Vegas numbers, if you look at projections, if you look at what people are thinking, their schedule is they've got a lot of things in their favor. The back half, the first 5 or 6 games are going to be tough, but the last 9 or 10 games, they've got a good chance to do a lot of things in that. And so people are betting on them. People are putting money on. And when Vegas sees somebody starting to put a lot of money on something, they need to change the odds. And so they need to make it less profitable for a team to win.
Gotcha. So the long odds are the higher payouts. And since that's the case, and so many people were betting on the Niners, they said, just in case we do have to pay this out, let's change the odds.
We need to bring it down. We need to base – I won't say discourage people, but we'd rather have them betting them at 5 or 10 to 1 than at 30 or 40 to 1.
Gotcha, because the payout. Oh, okay. See, I'm learning how to gamble. My wife is going to hate that, but I'm learning how to gamble.
You got to be ready for the future of America.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to continue with the talk about the team. Did anything about the draft? So we go from Jimmy Garoppolo, like you were saying, and we extended him, and the schedule comes out. Then, there's the draft. Anything special about this draft? Did you notice any trends or anything like that? Anyone stand out to you about this draft?
Yeah, it's interesting. They, obviously Mike McGlinchey is the proverbial plug and play guy. You draft him and then trade Trent Brown the next day, or really that night. And you've got that's clearly a win now. We want to set this up right now type of thing. But at the same time, if you look at most of these picks, I'm not going to say that they're for the future, but they seem to focus more. Last year, they were finding guys that they could plug in right away. You're looking for some guys that you can get some impact from. This year, it's hard to say, like Dante Pettis, Fred Warner. These are 2 guys that they have the talent to, there are specific roles that they can fill in right now, but not starting roles. And especially, obviously, we'll go into Reuben Foster a little bit more, but with the way things are with Foster, that, bumps down what Fred Warner's role will be. But you've got guys that they have it's kind of like last year, and John Lynch has talked about this, where they just needed guys. They needed new bodies. We've seen the roster turnover. I posted something a few days ago where, compared to January 1st, 2017, right when they fired Chip Kelly and Trent Baalke, there's, I think, 1 offensive starter. 35 of the 43 players that were either starters or notable reserves are gone. So this year was different. This year's draft was more about We need to find particular pieces we can plug into a specific role, not just like we need better players.
Yeah, and we talked about that the other night, Mike. We were talking about how there's very minimal people that are still on this offensive side of the football compared to, Chip Kelly or Jim Harbaugh, Chip Kelly to Kyle Shanahan.
Hey, don't forget about my man Tom Sula, right?
Yeah, well, Tom Sula, I got you. But Fuch, I wanted to ask you a question. Is there any two that in particular of this draft that excited you? Like you as a person, not you as like Niners Nation or anything like that. You as a person, as a Niners fan, anybody that stood out to you that you really are excited to see out of this draft?
I mean, Dante Pettis, I remember when they brought him in for a visit. It was either an official visit or a workout. But I realized basic college stats don't necessarily translate over. But a guy that averages 20 yards a kickoff or a punt return and, set the record for touchdowns, he feels like the guy that they can plug in. I mean, at wide receiver, sure, they don't have, that clear number one guy, but they've got a lot of talent there already. They've got, they saw last year. I mean, obviously it depends on what happens with Goodwin, what happens with Bourne, guys like that, if they can build on last year. But they brought in he's a playmaker. He's like one of those guys that you can, they're going to be able to use in a lot of different roles. And, Trent Taylor was a very capable punt returner. But I mean, I think he was in the top 10 or 15 in average per return, but you just never felt like, oh, he's going to bust that 80-yard punt return. Whereas Dante Pettis, barring any fumble issues, and when it comes to players, the only concern is whether or not they're going to fumble the ball. But I am really excited to see him.
Yes. Go ahead, Nick. I know you want to get to it. Go ahead and say it, Nick.
Well, we've been going through. Me and Mike have been going through this battle in the last couple of podcasts, and the question that we had asked each other was, with the additions of the rookies that are coming in now, who does that put any of the rookies from last year on the bubble? And we've been going back and forth about Trent Taylor, Dante Pettis, because they're both similar. They both play the slot more. They both do kickoff or special teams, we'll just say. And Mike really thinks that Trent Taylor's job is up in the air.
Can I defend myself really quick? It's only because if Trent Taylor, he only had like 400 something yards. He had a couple of receptions. They were crucial because a lot of them were on third down, right? But you take away his punt or kick return ability because we have so many guys now that can do that, right? And I think that they can do it a little bit better. Like you said, he was reliable, he was consistent, but you never felt like he was going to break one. He wasn't going to change the game, so to speak, right? But we have guys now that we think can do that. And if you make his receptions that were third down, the chain movers, the memorable catches, first or second down, he really wasn't that spectacular of a player. That was my point. And I was saying that it's going to be harder for him to make the roster, even though fans fell in love with him.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I think there is a misconception about Pettis. I think Pro Football Focus ran his snap totals, and I think he played 15% of his snaps in the slot in college. Like he has the skill set that can translate there, I think, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I think Taylor definitely built a name for himself on those third downs with some really tough catches. He showed great hand, and that's the thing is, there's a rookie. If you can show great hands, you're gonna build trust. I do think though that Pettis is a guy that's gonna push. I think Kendrick Bourne's on the bubble. I do think that he could. He looked good when he got an opportunity late in the season, but when you're undrafted free agent, second round pick, it's gonna be tough. But yeah, no, I think Bourne and Taylor, I think they are definitely on the bubble. I still think that Taylor has built the kind of trust that you don't necessarily, that especially, Jimmy Garoppolo's got a guy that he likes. He's, maybe he stays around a little longer.
Well, and that's what Mike tried to counter with, because he said, well, Jimmy Garoppolo put his neck on the line with Daniel Kilgore, and we've seen what happened to him. Yeah. So I was just going back and forth with this debate, and we went to the debate about Mike was like, you don't need a receiver that's only going to get you 7 yards per catch. And I'm like, well, it's different. If he's like first and second, I'm taking that 7 yards every time, because now you're down to second and 3 or third and 3, whatever. But I don't think Taylor is. I definitely agree with you on Bourne. What do you think about somebody like a Matt Breida being on the bubble?
If they had drafted a running back, maybe, but Joe Williams is on the bubble. I mean, it's possible that he busts out and everything is fine, and because I mean, you can tell just based on what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have said, there's something there in terms of like questioning whether Joe Williams is going to be able to be that guy. It's Kyle Shanahan has said repeatedly that it's not a way, it's not a conditioning issue. He's in shape, everything's fine with that. But knowing the playbook, knowing his plays, knowing his blockers, all that. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say that Matt Breida is definitely a 100% lock, but I would be pretty shocked if he did not have a significant role.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. All right, again, guys, we want to let you guys know that we are talking with Fooch from Niners Nation. If you guys are on Twitter, you're a 49ers fan, I guarantee you know who this guy is. So we want to go ahead and keep this thing moving, but we want to let you guys know again who it is that we're speaking to. All right, so the draft came and went. One of my favorite guys in this draft, the most intriguing guys, was Fred Warner. I didn't know much about him. I had heard his name, especially when Reuben Foster first got in trouble and all this stuff went down. So you start looking at linebackers and everything, and I thought that we were going to address the position earlier. So there were some other names that caught my eye, but Fred Warner was a guy down the list, and then it turned out the Niners get him in the third round. So I wanted to ask you about, was it the third round? Yeah, it was the third round, right? Okay. So I wanted to ask you about things with Reuben Foster in particular. We know what's happened already. We heard about the allegations and how she recanted, and the judge threw all that out, and the gun charge went from a felony to a misdemeanor. The marijuana case has been thrown out. What do you think his suspension, if any, is going to be coming from the NFL? Because we know the NFL does not do things based off of the legal system.
Yeah, they kind of pick and choose how they're going to punish people. The best comparison right now, at least for the marijuana charge, so let's back up real quick. So there's the marijuana charge and there's the gun charge. The marijuana charge was dismissed, but just to be very clear, it was dismissed because he went through a diversion program for first-time offenders. A similar instance, and I'm not comparing domestic violence to marijuana, but when Bruce Miller had his incident when he threw his girlfriend's phone and there was all that, the charges were dismissed when he went through an anger management class. So it's one of those things where basically it doesn't mean that he's innocent. It just means that he went through this program. And given the police report saying there was a smell of marijuana at his house, clearly, there's that. But a good comparison is Kansas City Chiefs tight end Demetrius Harris. He was arrested a year ago. He was arrested in 2017. In March, he pled guilty. He reached a plea deal, and he part of his plea deal was 2 days in jail, and he got a 1-game suspension. If you look through marijuana suspensions for marijuana arrests are usually 1 game. There's a lot of other implications for drug testing and being in the program. I mean, he'll be bad. Like Foster's in stage 2 of the drug program at this point, which means they can test him anytime. You can test more regularly. Usually you get tested once in the off season, and I think once during the season. And then once you get tested, you're fine. You can go do, you can look at it. I honestly, to be perfectly honest, look at Aaron Hernandez. He was saying that he smoked marijuana pretty much every single day. As long as you avoid, as long as you get that first test. So for the marijuana, there's a decent chance he gets a 1-game suspension. The gun charges, it's weird. If you look at it, remember Alden Smith had his gun charges along with everything else, but it was such, I would say 1 to 2 games seems to make sense. But the NFL is so hard to predict when it comes to discipline.
When you say 1 to 2 games, do you mean total or in addition to the 1 for the marijuana that you anticipate?
I think he ends up 1 to 2 total. I don't know how they're going to treat they're going to treat the investigation. Like I said, with the victim or the alleged victim recanting her statement, I don't know how the NFL is going to look at that compared to like what happened with Ezekiel Elliott.
Right. You know what's interesting? You brought something up that I didn't think about. So he was arrested in Alabama for the marijuana, right? That was like when they pulled him over. I don't know if it was he was officially arrested, as a matter of fact.
He was arrested and cited.
And then when the young lady called the police on him, they did say that they smelled marijuana at the house also. Yeah. So that's another. I didn't even think about that until you just mentioned that.
Well, so the thing is, and it's actually what I know. Matt Barrows pointed it out. The idea that he was arrested in Alabama for something that's legal in California, and he was arrested in California for something that's legal in Alabama. The people are like, well, why did they mention? Marijuana is legal. Why did they mention in the statement? I think it goes to whether or not there's intoxication. in the context of that. So that's why just to clear that up, I'm assuming it could be a whole other issue entirely because it is the police. But I would say, yeah, I mean, I don't know how the NFL is going to treat that part of it. You're right. That's something where it's like, yes, it's legal in California, but he's still potentially could get in trouble. I don't know. The NFL is very slipshod in the way they handle this stuff.
Yeah, and that's just one thing on that. He's also the failed drug test at the combine is also held against him as well, right?
So when he failed the drug test, he was entered into the program. I'm still a little confused if he went into stage 1 or stage 2. Like it was a diluted sample, and so they treat that as a failed test,
right? And
so I don't know if because like if you're in stage 1, you're only in for 90 days, as long as you don't fail any tests, and then you're out of it, and then you start back over. But I don't know exactly. It's weird. Like the NFL is not very transparent about it, which I think for medical purposes that's fine. Like I'm not saying that should be, but like, in terms of us knowing where he was at in this process, because if you're in stage 1 versus stage 2, discipline is different in terms of like in stage 1, you're not going to get suspended. You may get fines, but at the most, I think you get bumped into stage 2, and then you start getting into the fines and the suspensions. And the other thing is we don't know. I mean, we don't know if he's failed another drug test, if he failed one at all last season that led to a fine or anything.
Right. So, well, let's just hope for the best for Foster, because I know that tons of fans are going to be excited to see him on the field. I know John Lynch said it's state of the franchise that he was excited to have him back in the building and going from there. So hopefully he learns his lesson from what has happened. I see that a lot of players are sticking by his side now, so hopefully he'll learn from that. But I wanted to ask you a question about rule changes, and I wanted to get what your opinion is on the kickoff rule change, and what that means for the entirety of the NFL. What do you think?
It's interesting because obviously some of the other rule changes have gotten a little more publicity. I was looking at it. It went so basically you can't players have to stand or they can't get the same running start coming down the field, so you don't have that the big collision. Which does that change anything for onside kicks, or are onside kicks considered separate from a regular kickoff?
You got me on that.
Because there's now the rules talk about how you can only have you have to have 5 players on each side, and you have to do this and that, and so that change I don't know. I have not seen any indication whether or not that changes onside kicks, or because if you were to go basically by these rules, you could not have onside kicks, but I don't think that's the case. But I don't know. I think if nobody can get a running start, I don't really know what that means as far as how that sets up blocking. If you're a kick returner and you get the ball. Does this put more of the onus on the kick returner to find some holes? It's hard to say. I
would think. Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I would think this definitely benefits the kick returner, or in that general of getting those. We were just talking about 20 yards per return on an average. You would think that if you can't run down the field, you have to wait to take off. That it's definitely going to make the run game, these guys getting more yards per attempt off the bat, because obviously they're going to catch the ball and they're just going to go. And those gunners aren't going to be there like they were before with that running start. So I don't know.
Another interesting thing about it is that there's no wedge blocking anymore. I remember that they used to be allowed to have 3 guys blocking for the kick returner. Then they reduced it down to 2. Now you can't do it at all. So everything is going to be one-on-one blocking. So if you miss a block or your guys pick up all the blocks, these runners are going to have huge lanes to go through. So it could be a lot earlier tackles, and it could be a lot larger returns with the one-on-one tackling because of the wedge blocking thing. So that's something that's going to be really, really interesting to keep an eye on. I think that I personally think that we're going to see bigger returns this year, and I think that's what the NFL is hoping for.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they definitely are going to – there's going to be more returns. There's going to be more returns and touchbacks, although I did see also that if the ball lands in the end zone, you don't it's a touchback. You don't have to you don't have to take a knee. Basically, you don't have to touch it. The offense, if the ball touches the end zone, it's
automatically a touchback.
I'm pretty sure it's automatically a touchback.
You can't bring it out if you want.
That I don't know.
That's crazy.
No, I think I'm not totally sure. I'm guessing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not totally sure about that part, but it said there's something about basically where, once it goes in the end zone, it's not so basically it used to be if you didn't touch, if you didn't touch the ball and it hit the end zone, then the other team could conceivably run down and pick it up and score. But at the very least, there's not that. I don't know if it's like if you catch it in the end zone versus if you
okay, you're talking about.
I'm not 100% sure about that.
I get it. I'm sorry. So you're talking about like if the ball actually touches the ground okay. I'm sorry. I have one other question about the kickoff thing and get both of your guys' opinions on this. They're eventually, it seems like they're trying to phase the kickoffs out because they're saying it's the most dangerous play in the NFL, right? And I understand that. I respect that and everything. However, if they eventually phase this out, there's just going to be another play that is the most dangerous play in the NFL. So I want to get your guys' quick yes or no. Do you think the league will eventually get rid of kickoffs altogether? And do you think they should get rid of kickoffs altogether? So we'll go back to Fuchs first.
Yeah, I think eventually they'll get rid of it. I mean, every rule change has kind of been going towards that, eliminating plays, and I think it seems like the inevitable outcome.
Wow. Do you think they should do it though? Do you think they should get rid of them?
I mean, football's like, I don't know. They keep trying to talk about wanting to make football safer, but football's inherently dangerous, and it's like that's just the way it is. I don't know. I mean, if you're gonna make it part of a wholesale changes where I'm not saying that it becomes touch football, but like conceivably where you're taking away so much more, then yes. But if it's just like we're just gonna do this, I think if you just do that, then you're just cherry picking to make yourself look good.
Okay, I get that. Nick, what about you? And do you think?
I think that eventually. I do think that eventually it's going to go away. Do I think that it should? No, I think it takes away from the game. I think we're making football so much more harder to watch because these guys have trained their entire lives on how to make these tackles, how to do these different types of, tackling moves and stuff like that. And we're taking away from the way they played the game the entire year, which is going to make more injuries because you're teaching people how to do something that they're not used to doing. And like Fuchs said, I mean, it's just a dangerous sport, no matter what you're going to do. You see guys getting injured with no contact. Most of the main injuries are coming with no contact. So do I think it'll be bad for the sport? I do. But I guess it's something, if it happens, we'll all have to get used to. And I'm sure we'll all adapt to it and get used to it. But I don't want to see the team just starting on the 20. I mean, special teams brings another different energy to the game in the NFL. So I wanted to touch on this real quick before we move on because JD with Hawk Hater TV had a question for Fuchs, and he says, thoughts on Eric Armstead's 5th-year option being picked up. Is he likely gone if he gets injured again or doesn't produce this season?
I mean, I'm not surprised they picked up his option because, I mean, none of his injuries have been like the devastating, like, torn Achilles, torn this or that, knock on wood. But the option, like the option's only, is only guaranteed for injury right now. So that, he just has to be able to pass a physical a year from now. Yeah, I would not be surprised if he was gone. I don't know. It's really going to, I mean, it's hard to say, given that he has, he's missed so much time the last couple of years, is he able to because he's moving to that strong end role in the base defense now as opposed to the Leo, and they're trying, it's not the same as with Tank Carradine, but you're moving him around and trying to figure out what he can do. And it seems like he's still best suited inside as a defensive tackle. But I don't know. I honestly don't know if he'll be back, on that 5th year. I think for the price, it makes sense not for him not to be around, but this year is so huge for him. I would say for virtually anybody. I mean, there's the notable, obviously, like a Jimmy Garoppolo. You need, you're expecting big things from him this year. It's high expectations, but Eric Armstead has as much to prove as anybody this year.
Absolutely. I know he wasn't asking for my opinion, but I think that it's interesting that considering how little experience this regime has with him, they picked up that 5th-year option. Even just on paper, it just seemed interesting to me. I think that he's showing flashes in practice, and they want to really see what he can do. All right. We're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap this thing up. But before we do, we want to get to the anthem rule changes. I know that this is something that Fuchs is going to be super passionate about here. Hey, hold on, wait, do that again. Let me put it up on your shirt. Look at that. There you go.
I got my cap T-shirt on.
So Fuchs also does the resistant protest is the other thing that I want you can talk about all that stuff. But let's start with the anthem protest really quick and not the anthem protest, the anthem rule change first. All right. So now the NFL is making it so that if you're out on the field, all staff, not just players, all staff must be standing. I've heard people say that this even means like vendors have to stand and everything. So that's going to lead me to a question later on about Jed York's statement. And then I want to touch on the Jets owner statement also. But Pooch, I want to get your thoughts on this because, like I said, I know this is something that you're passionate about.
Well, I think you were talking about, who's going to have to stand and this and that. The NFL doesn't necessarily know because they were saying there were typos in the rule when it was being processed at the owners meeting because it was put together so quickly. It's just one of those things where nobody actually knows exactly what it means and what this is all going to entail. So my thoughts, as people on Twitter are quick to respond to, it's all nonsense. It's all like if the NFL, like there's two ways that the NFL could handle this, and this would not be an issue. The first, and my personal preference, is to remove the national anthem from before sporting events. There are people that are not going to accept that, but the national anthem is for like Olympic sporting events, and that's it. Like we've heard all about the paid patriotism and all that stuff with the Defense Department, with the NFL, and the NFL, and they do this with everything. They try and wrap themselves in the flag, whether it be with the military, whether it be with Breast Cancer Awareness Month, all these issues. They try and wrap themselves in this sort of form of morality to make it seem like, oh, we're morally good and you should, we're the people you should listen to, and they screw everything up. Whether it be this, if you look at, there's been extensive writing about Breast Cancer Awareness Month and just how shady it is with where the money goes. My problem is I've made it very clear how I feel about Colin Kaepernick, Eric Reid, and the players and their issues specifically, and we could talk forever on that. But just in general, the NFL's attempts to dictate morality and attempts to make it clear that, like, make it seem like that they're the ones that should be talking about it, I have as much a problem with that as anything else.
Do they do the national anthem at NASCAR?
I would assume so. If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be NASCAR.
Yeah, they do.
They do?
Yeah.
And that's so interesting because, like, never mind. I'm not gonna do it. So I wanted to ask you about Jed York's comments about how he's not going to sell concessions during the national anthem. Jed York it seemed like the kind of guy, so far from everything that I can tell, that was in support of the players having their right to do this. And it seems like he's taking any and every opportunity he can to make that clear to the fans. They said that the 49ers abstained from the voting and all that. So I want to get your thoughts on that. And what does that mean to you? What message do you think that Jed York is sending by saying that?
Well, if you look at his history off the field, if we remove, obviously everybody's going to remain pissed about all that, but he obviously he made he and the 49ers made the $1 million donation to two Bay Area charities after Colin Kaepernick announced his $1 million donation. He donated, I think, $75,000 to the North Carolina LGBTQ organization. With the bathroom bill in Charlotte, they were having the owners meetings there. There was a lot of complaints, and so he made this donation. So he's clear. He's very clearly a liberal in terms of the causes he believes in. But the NFL obviously is owned mostly by conservative old white dudes. And so I don't know. He clearly wants to, make it clear that that this is what he believes in. But the fact that, it also sounds like there actually wasn't a formal vote. I know Pro Football Talk was talking about it, how all there was basically they kind of went around the room to see who was believing in what. And then they just said it was unanimous, which I guess so. I don't know. I'm glad that Jed has come out and said what he said. And he's made, the 49ers have made a commitment to the community, and they've done a good job with that. So there's that. I don't know. He's not a powerful enough voice in the NFL for this to be, to make a big impact with the rest of the owners at this point. Because you've got your Jerry Joneses, your Robert Krafts, you've got the older guys that are still, the old guard still runs things, and the younger guys, we've seen it with Jed. Even, we were talking about the Jets owner, was it Chris Johnson, who his brother was appointed ambassador to Great Britain by Trump. So it's interesting. I'm wondering if he got a call from Woody. I don't know. It's the NFL is being dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
You're on mute, buddy.
It definitely is. It's I just look at this whole aspect right here as that, I personally am with Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed and everybody that has knelt because of the things that go on in this world. I just feel like the NFL didn't side by these guys and their true feelings, and I think they made it more about money than what the real reasoning is. And I mean, the NFL was still one of the most watched things last year with the issues going on. So, it was actually higher than it was the year before. To me, it's all nonsense. I completely agree with you, Fooch. I completely agree with you. I think that if you want to be able to stand or kneel for anything that you think, you have that right in this world. And that's what this flag is all about. We break the flag rule every day. Every American does. You're not supposed to wear it on clothing. You're not supposed to have it as banners. You're not supposed to do as all these things under the flag rule. Us as Americans break that rule every single day. It's the same exact type of thing. And I mean, I don't want to get too much into it, but I just think it's completely nonsense. And I think it was a backdoored way of the NFL to not lose sponsorships and not lose people that are bringing in money to the sport. And instead of standing up for what is right for the American people and the people that have their beliefs and what they believe in. So I am 100% with you. I agree totally that it's completely nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that stood out to me after all this was when the Jets owner came out and said that if his players protest during the anthem, he's going to pay the fines. And like he said it and like wanted to wear this as a badge of honor. But yeah, the rules dictate that. So like the rules say that if a player is seen protesting, the team is going to be fined. Players aren't getting fined for this year. It's the team that's going to get fined. And then the rule says that the teams have the responsibility or the option to discipline those players as they see fit. So what was the point of the Jets owner coming out and saying that, knowing what we know about his brother in particular? I wanted to ask that to Fooch.
That's a good question. I think I'm assuming he said it because he wanted to make it clear that they were not going to in turn discipline their players. I don't know if anybody's followed up with him about the fact that Woody would probably not do the same thing. I don't know. It's weird like that. I'm glad he said it. I'm glad that somebody vocalized it. I mean, vote no then, if you really, but obviously, like I said, there may not have necessarily been a formal vote though. I guess the way the NFL handles all this is just so poor. And they, yes, it's very clearly, as Nick said, it is all about the money. That's, and they're entitled to do that, but they also need to realize they're going to get called out when they're, when it's nonsense.
Yeah. Here's my overall thought of it all. There wasn't a rule before, and there obviously needed to be a rule. The NBA has a rule. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if the MLB has a rule, but I'm gonna talk about the NBA because that's something that people tend to focus on and draw these comparisons to. The NFL didn't have a rule. They're still giving players the option to stay in the locker room without being fined or anything like that. But in my opinion, if they're trying to get this to quiet down or whatever, now I think you're just going to have people on the sidelines counting and looking for jerseys that aren't there, and you're going to be seeing these reports even more. So I don't know if it's going to necessarily quiet things down or whatever, but because I can see people who are genuinely still in the locker room getting wrapped up or taped up are going to be getting questioned now. Hey, how come you weren't out there? Were you doing this in protest, in protest of the anthem, or were you just back there? You get what I'm saying? So I think they might be creating more than what they need to.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think it's very subtle, but they kind of gave away the fact that what they really think in this, in the sense that the way that the rule is written, it talks about how, in the statement they said, we understand, that the protests were misconstrued and all this and that. But then in the rule, it says, if you're on the sideline, you will show proper respect for the flag. And so that suggests that taking a knee is not showing proper respect. And so that says to me that this, it's like, hey, you're kind of telling on yourself a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, go ahead. That's all.
Yeah, no, I mean, Rai make 1, 2, 3 as made a good quote. He said, "It's right to stand or kneel during the anthem. It has never been a need to stand rather than it is respectful. Now people are there or in the locker room, but you can't kneel." So basically, that's the rule that is in, and you are correct on that. There was, I mean, a lot of debate going on in the chat room, obviously in the chat. There were things that were done incorrectly, like the Colin Kaepernick wearing, the pig socks. Like he shouldn't have done that. Like to boost up his his stand on things. But, we're not saying that everybody is correct in this matter, but the overall, the matter was handled incorrectly is I think what all of us are trying to say here, as the NFL handled it totally wrong. But yeah, I'm definitely over the whole thing. I think every human being, every United States American, every person in this world should have a right to an opinion. And that is the way that it should be. And I don't think there should have been a rule change or force somebody to do something on your platform, because those people fought to get hard to their platform. Whether it's there's United States Americans that have fought for this country that don't stand for the flag, but nothing is being held, against them. It wasn't about the flag. It wasn't about the troops. It wasn't about police officers or first responders in general. It was about sending a message as to what's going on in this world. And I think the NFL could have handled it better. That's all I really got to say.
Yeah, I think the rule was needed. I think they needed to define it. And I like that they left the players out where they wouldn't get in trouble also. I just think that, this was bound to happen after we saw that there was no rule in place. They had to come up and officially make something in stone. They had to set something. I don't think they were just going to continue without a rule being in place. That's all. Fooch, I want to thank you again for your time, man. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we probably went over a little bit longer than what we expected. Is there anything else that you personally want to touch on before we get out of here? Anything that you're working on over there at Niners Nation or resistant protest or anything like that you want to promote at this time?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're just chugging through the off season. One thing that we do every year, and we've done it now for 5 or 6 years at least, is we do a 90 and 90 series. We do a post on every single player, and they're not like huge film breakdowns of each player. It's just like, hey, we're just going to remind you about these guys. Yes, you're going to know who Joe Staley is, but do you know who Malcolm Johnson is? It's my favorite part is when somebody replies is like, who? Yeah. And so, yeah, I think part of it is just reminding you who these guys are. I mean, and it's just fun to talk about. And even the guys that we know are gonna be around, the Joe Staley's, Jimmy Garoppolo's, it's still just a little something to talk about. So that will be, when you're looking for content in the middle of July and, the beat writers are on vacation, the rest of us are all around.
Yeah, absolutely. We do player interviews here, and then especially during the offseason, we even bring on guys who are trying out for the team, the undrafted free agents and all that. We even get those guys on here. And like you said, people are like, who is this guy? Where'd you find him? You know what I mean? But, we do some digging. We're trying to get some exposure to these guys because you never know. Matt Breida was an undrafted free agent, and, he worked out and all. And so you never know who you're going to come across. And it's good to try to get a little bit of background information on these guys. So, Nick, you want to wrap us up, man?
Yeah, man. Like I said, guys, you can always follow us. Make sure you subscribe. Follow us on all our avenues. Visit nothingbutniners.com. You can check out all of our social media avenues there. If you don't already, make sure you give that Niners Nation a follow as well. I'll let him. Fooch, you just want to give everybody where they can follow you and your website and all that stuff real quick?
Yeah, NinersNation.com, at NinersNation with the S, not Niner Nation, Niners. For those that think we should be on fire, just fine.
That's what I was going to say.
It's all just, I mean, it's pretty easy to find it all through that.
Yeah, and guys, if you don't already, make sure you follow them. A lot of great content over there as well. Definitely love what they're doing over there. Got a lot of good beat writers and stuff like that. Writers. Actually, one of our writers, I believe, still writes for you, Scott Galen.
Yeah, it's often he drops in some content.
Yeah, great guy. But yeah, guys, if you don't already, make sure you follow them as well as us. Follow us, anywhere. We got a couple podcasts coming out for you soon. You can check that out on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play, wherever you listen to your podcasts at. But guys, Fooch, once again, thanks for joining us. It was a pleasure. Had a great conversation. We touched on all things, and faithful above all else. Stay faithful. We out.